Energized show, up the Irish.
Okay, what's going on, guys? And welcome to a brand new episode of Energized, brought to you by Forged Irish Stout. Ross,
are you intoxicated or something?
Introduce the guest, man.
Today we are bringing you a PFL Dublin special, and there's only one man who can talk from top to bottom of the card, and that is Dan, the Outlaw Hardy. Dan, how are you doing, my man?
I'm good, guys. I feel like I fit in now with you guys rocking the sunglasses. I'm usually the odd one out sitting there.
Oh, no, all day, every day, twice on Sunday. Dan, obviously, we have you on here to talk PFL Dublin. You're coming to the 3 Arena. You're coming out in force. You've assembled a large amount of Irish fighters on the card. What was it like getting the fighters in the door, and how happy are you with the card you've assembled?
You know, I'm happy with it. I think there are some certain fights on there that are going to really deliver. I think we're going to be surprised with some of the performances, but I mean, honestly, there are a couple of my favorites on there. Fighters that I really want to see back in action at a high level, and that I know have got a lot of promise. But the ones I've been chasing, I mean, you know, Andreas Binder, I've been wanting to bring him into the PFL for a while. Just a very, very impressive individual. And, you know, especially now at lightweight as well. Like, I feel like this is the weight class where he can really be a world champion, but then taking on someone that's got more experience and, you know, probably knows his game pretty well as well, considering the crossover with the two gyms with Skatitsi. That is one of the standouts for me, but I'm happy with the card. I feel like, I mean, there were a couple of fighters that I did really want on the card that just got away from us, but that I'll be circling back to them next year. We're very much in the process of building, and like the thing is, like with the Paris event being it was such a success with Cedric Doumbé, basically like holding the show down for us and selling it so well. It's different here because, like, I mean, I was there for the McGregor-Brandao fight. Like, the expectations in Irish mixed martial arts from that event have been so high. I feel like it's always been difficult to kind of reach that height again. And for me, the next height of Irish mixed martial arts is seeing the younger fighters coming through. The base level of Irish MMA right now is very, very high. And we see that in the amateurs. And I think that in the next couple of years, we're going to have some really, really big Irish stars that are going to stand out. And that's what I'm looking for the next shows over there.
Yeah, I will say, I think that is the thing that PFL have done differently than the likes of Bellator have done. They've taken their own talent and they've made them feel special, like your Kayla Harrisons, like your Brendan Loughnane. Even when we saw Nathan Kelly fought over in New York, you know, he was doing a bit of pre-fight media. We saw him, we always laugh saying he was like racing cars around this like car park at one stage, and just thought that was like a bit weird, but like also unique, which is what you're looking for. It stuck in my memory, so it worked. But what is it that you feel the PFL do differently? Because you've worked with nearly all the promotions in one capacity or other at this stage, Sam.
You know, and of course, I'm still very new to the PFL. You know, I've only just kind of started working with them in the sense of a matchmaker and the head of fighter ops for PFL Europe, which is my job full time stepping in next year. That's where I really fully take over all the cards and all the matchmaking. This year's been a learning process for me, and you know, seeing how the PFL do things and trying to figure out, you know, what the goal is for the PFL and how I can add to it. The thing I've learned first and foremost is that there are far too many fighters across Europe for the amount of shows that we've got, right? We have good fighters that can't get action. We have veteran fighters that can't get matched because they've got too many fights. Yeah. And the thing is with all of the promotions, when they've got that one belt at the top of the division and everyone's chasing after it, it tends to be down to marketability and, of course, record, name recognition, ticket sales, etc. Whereas the PFL, it's about winning fights, right? Like the money's there at the end of the road when you've won the fights. Of course, if you can promote yourself and you can sell the fights, then that's even better. But it's a meritocracy, right? And what I'm trying to find are the best martial artists. My job right now is to focus on Europe, But when we open up these other regions around the world, we're going to do the same things. We're going to find the champion in the Middle East. We're going to find the champion in South America and the champion in Oceania and Asia. And we're going to bring all those champions together. And then they're going to fight off for the $1 million. Like, that's really where I feel like we're going to every corner of the earth to find the best fighters in each region. And then we put them on an even playing field so they can work their way up to the top. And if they get to the top, of course, there's the $1 million, the world title. And then beyond that, now we've got Francis Ngannou headlining the pay-per-view events. We'll have the big pay-per-view shows where the European champions, the world champions can then step into and, make some serious money on a good platform.
Yeah, Dan, break the news now. Will Francis Ngannou be at PFL Dublin?
I'm working on it. I would love him to be there. I actually don't know where he is right now. He's in such high demand. I would love to get him there. We're working on a few other guests as well. I do want to do some fighter meet and greet. So there will be some stars there, absolutely, to meet the fans. But Francis, I don't know right now. He is the hottest commodity in combat sports.
Yeah, because Ross wants to fight him in the main event, don't you, Ross?
Yeah,
Is that the matchup? There's $2 million on the table, my friend.
Yeah,
if you fancy
you know
it.
what? I'll take it.
This is
Now,
number one bullshit.
how I'll come out the other side? Does it come with health insurance? Then I'll take it.
Yeah.
But actually, we want to get into the card as well, Dan. Obviously, the card was announced, and then it was taken down, and then it came back up. What sort of happened there? I'm sure you're aware of that.
Yeah, I just wanted a reshuffle. I wanted a reshuffle of the card. The thing is with this, again, this is the first year that we're doing a European regional event. We've got 4 championship fights, 4 25-minute fights, and they're going to be battles. I expect, at least half of them are going to be really arduous back and forths. I think we're going to get some standout performances, but I think they're both. All the fights are very evenly matched. So I just wanted to kind of break the pace a little bit and put a couple of fights in between that will, be a little bit shorter perhaps and a little bit more intense. But honestly, like you look at this card, and I could have built it any way really. Like when we go back to the Newcastle card, that very much felt like a traditional MMA fight where we had the main and co-main event, and then everybody else falls into place underneath. When we went to Berlin, the card was not the same because we had standout fights in every weight class, and you could have just we could have organized those fights in any order based on where we were. Now we had Farbod at the top because he was the local fighter, but it's the same thing with this card. Like we've got Brett Johns halfway down the card, we've got Tom Breeze halfway down the card. Binder Skatitsi could have been the main event. I have a feeling that when McGrillen and Wesley Meyer get into one another, get under each other's skin, that's going to be one of the main focuses of the fight. But that's aside from the 4 championship fights that we've got. Like it's difficult to stack these fights and do justice to everyone on the card because a lot of them could be main co-main event fights. You talked about Nate Kelly. He had such a good performance. He's had great performances generally with the PFL, but this for me feels like a homecoming. And I wanted him to have that celebration because, first of all, he's killing it on ticket sales. Like people want to see Nate Kelly, and they've not had the opportunity to see him fight live for a long time. So this is going to be a good opportunity for him to really kind of, thank the fans for their support at the same time as potentially getting a couple of Irish European champions. At the same time as, Dylan Tuke's going to try and steal the show because he's annoyed that he's not in the main event. That's been the biggest challenge, really, is trying to figure out the right order of this card to make sure that people don't feel like they're being neglected. But everybody's a main event fighter in their own mind, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. And I do feel, looking at the card, being totally honest, that like when I was looking at the card, I went, I actually don't know which one. Well, because I think John Mitchell was originally the main event, and I was like, big fan of John Mitchell. Like, hope he goes and wins the 100K. Obviously, we're Irish, so we're just going to support him. That's where our boys will show. But like, I was like, oh, having a Cork fella headline the Dublin show. I was like, oh, is that going to be the best for business or whatever? But like, they all hold the same level of excitement for me. Like you said, I'd say there's about 8 or 10 fights on the card that I'm like, yeah, I really want to see that one. Yeah, I really want to see that one. And like the whole way out. And like that is one thing that I will commend yourself on. The matchmaking is brilliant for it. Like Binder Skatitsi is great. Like seeing SBG versus SBG Charlestown, Owen Roddy versus John Kavanagh in the corners going at it. Like I know they do it the odd time on the regional scene, but seeing them doing it on a big stage like this is going to be very fun to see. There are some other ones. One question I actually did want to ask was the Lewis McGrillen fight. Obviously, in the original card, he was going to fight Matisse, and now he's fighting Wesley Maya. What happened there? Are we going to see Matisse sign with the PFL, or is that a bit up in the air?
Well, I mean, I honestly, I was very excited for that fight, and you know, when that fight was agreed, I was hoping that was going to be a showcase bout, and it was going to kind of potentially steal the show. You know, we saw Mattis coming off that beautiful spinning back fist knockout on Pettis' show, and you know, he's clearly got a lot of potential. McGrillen, of course, is undefeated and wants to fight everybody that stares him in the face. So that's always going to be an interesting matchup. Unfortunately, you know, sometimes these things get out. You know, the fight got announced, contracts weren't signed, money demands double, and those kind of things. And ultimately, they're the kind of circumstances where I find out whether people really want to fight or not. And I honestly, as much as I like Mattis, I don't really feel like he wanted that fight, because the match was made. It was agreed through John Kavanagh. He sent me his passport. We were going to get the fight locked in. Contracts went out, but unfortunately, the news of the fight was escaped from the PFL side, and then he has a manager that wants double the money. And I have budgets I'm working for, and what the situation it was putting me in is that I was going to have to lose a fight from the undercard, put 2 people off the card to have him back on the card, and I can't do that on my conscience. You know what I mean? Like I'm. People sometimes don't realize. I mean, like people are getting decent money for decent fights, and they don't want to take risks. There's a lot of that in mixed martial arts right now. Like I was fighting people for no money at all and taking big risks, and that wasn't ideal. But there's got to be a middle ground. People have to step up and take an opportunity. Now, Mattis was offered a 4-fight contract going into next year. If he'd have won the fights, he'd have made 6 figures. But I don't know. Sometimes people like managers get in their ear and they kind of say, well, you know, you're worth this and you're worth that, and we got these views and that views. And ultimately, you know, you look at someone's record and you kind of start to pull it apart and you figure out what their actual value is. I can't pay over the odds for fighters that think their value is worth more than it is, unfortunately. And that it was a shame, because that would have been a good fight, and that would have been a good opportunity for Mattis to really prove himself. Even if he didn't win, you know, he would have had a good opportunity to prove himself, prove his guts and determination, have a good fight on the card. But I don't feel like he wanted it in the end. It all came down to money, and the demands were unreasonable.
Yeah, the back and forth those 2 lads would have had as well would have made it like a if not the fight to watch as well.
Yeah, for sure. But this in this situation now, like Wesley Maya doesn't like McGrillen. They've not liked each other for a while. And this has been kind of simmering in the background. Wesley Maya accepted the fight immediately. Didn't even want to know what the purse is. You know what I mean? He's desperate to fight. Like that speaks to me, because that makes me excited about watching a fighter. If it comes down to, well, I'll do it if it's this and if it's that, and I want to be compensated for the risks that I take. I mean, come on. Like, this is professional combat sports. Every fight's a risk. You know, you've got to be willing to back yourself sometimes. And unfortunately, in that situation, he went from having a 4-fight contract that would have taken him through to the end of next year to now negotiating himself out of a fight for a silly reason, really.
Yeah. Well, let's focus on people that are actually on the card now. Nathan Kelly, he's headlining the card. Like, what he's done, he's gone, like, he lost his first few fights, and now he's just gone on this unbelievable winning streak. What is it about Nathan Kelly that is just like, right, he's headlining, he's almost like the poster boy for PFL in Ireland?
You know, he impresses me every time he's out there. He's got such composure. He's got such a depth of technique. You know, you can take him anywhere, and you can be challenged with his technical ability, with his physicality. But I also feel like a fighter like Nathan Kelly, he needs that realization that the fans are there for him to support him. Because when he has been fighting away from home, you know, he doesn't have a big traveling fan base that is really showing him that kind of support. I think this is his opportunity to realize his potential. Going into 2024, Nate Kelly is going to be a big star in the PFL. I'm confident of that. And I think he just needs to realize the potential that he has. And this is his opportunity, you know? Like, go back, and I don't mean to keep likening it to this event, but for me, the McGregor Brandao event in Dublin was a standout. It was an incredible event. No one showed up to watch Brandao, right? No one showed up to see what Brandao brings to the table. That was McGregor knowing how much of a star he is and showing up and commanding the show. Sometimes you need a tough fight. You need someone that's awkward, like Solomos, to really drag out the best of you. I think this is going to be a real scrap for as long as it lasts. And I think what we're going to see is Nate Kelly realize his star potential and leave everybody with a good feeling about that event. That's what I'm expecting. And I'm expecting him to also carry that fan base into the new year and really show people what he's capable of in the PFL at the higher level. His opponent is tricky and awkward and challenging. He's going to want to scrap at long range. He's going to want to tangle up in the clinch and try and be as chaotic and as uncomfortable for Nate Kelly as possible. But the pressure's on Nate here to really perform, and putting him in this position on the card is going to further accentuate that pressure, and I think he's going to respond well.
Yeah, he's a great lad. The Brandao McGregor fight, that was actually the first ever event myself and Ross went to as well. That was off the rails that night, wasn't it, Ross?
Yeah, it was a night that will live on for in Irish MMA folklore forever.
Yeah, we started the podcast after that, like
from going from one Nate Kelly to the other at the bottom of the card. Nate the Great Kelly is going to do a featured amateur bout on the card. What did you make of this? And well, not what did you make of it, or what was the reason behind putting him on the card? And is this something that we might see in the future from PFL, seeing some amateur bouts on the card, or is Nate the Great a special character and that's why he's here?
Yeah, I mean, my intention was to have 3 or 4 amateur fights on this card. We ran into issues with the length of the show, given the fact that we've got 4 25-minute fights potentially. I was at the press conference where McGregor stole Aldo's belt, and I remember Nate being there, sitting on his dad's shoulders, telling Dana that he was going to be a world champion one day. And from that moment, from the attention that he got from the whole kind of the McGregor rise to fame, like there's been a lot of pressure on this kid's shoulders, and he's a very, very talented mixed martial artist. And he has a good fan base, he has a good following. But the thing I've realized about his fan base is it's very, very deep and it's very genuine. Like they want to follow his career. They understand that there are going to be ups and downs. Like he fought at the Four Nations in Wales recently, and he wasn't successful. But he picks himself up and he gets back in the gym. He's coaching, he's training all the time, and he represents to me a lifelong martial artist that's dedicated to bettering his craft, no matter how much pressure he's under. Like Nate Kelly at the top of the card has a decent following. Nathan Kelly, the young Nathan Kelly's got a big following. For a young man, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And in these circumstances where he gets an opportunity like this to step onto a card and to, show people what he's been working on, show people what he's capable of, and kind of, give a bit of thanks back to the people that have supported him for up to this point. Like that's for me what it's about. Like the amateurs are where it's at right now. There are a lot of amateur fighters coming through that in a year's time, they will be head and shoulders above the majority of the pros that we're watching. And I've seen that in the Irish mixed martial arts. I've seen it in Wales. I've seen it in Scotland. I've seen it in England. I've seen it all the way across Europe. And this is my way of opening the door to the amateurs. So when 2024 comes around, amateurs are going to look at PFL undercards and go, there might be a spot for me there. And they can use that as motivation to push through their career. I was an amateur once, but there was no such thing as amateur MMA. I was fighting on mats in a sports hall with 1 5-minute round. To be able to have these guys share a stage, and we have the same in the US with Biaggi Ali Walsh. Muhammad Ali's grandson, he's amateur still. He's doing very well on the PFL, and when the time comes for him to make his pro debut, the PFL Smart Cage will be there for him. And I want the same kind of offering to be in Europe to the amateurs across Europe as well.
Just a quick one on that. His opponent actually fought at the weekend and lost via TKO. Will there be any potential issues with him fighting on the card?
I will look into that. I'll check in with his team and make sure he's all right. I mean, we've got 30 days. He's got plenty of time to even if he was.
I want to give you the heads up in case you didn't know.
Yeah, he's got plenty of time to heal up and get back on it. But like I have people calling me every day, all day to jump on this card. So I'm not going to struggle with replacements if I need one. I don't think. Like I said, I would have liked a couple more amateur fights on this card, and through 2020, I've built in space on the undercards for at least 2 amateur bouts per show.
Yeah. No, we love to see it. We love the amateur fights, myself and Barry.
Yeah. Like obviously, France Malambo is going to be fighting to win the 100,000. And so will John Mitchell. But like other stars in the card, the way PFL promoting them has been like it's been amazing. Like the way like Dakota Tcheva, the way she's like really in with Man City, and Simeon Powell, and then and you also mentioned Lewis McGrillen. Like for people that aren't signed to an organization yet, from the outside looking in at PFL, they could be like, you know what, the way they treat their fighters is something very original. Would you agree with that, Dan?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I mean, everybody's got the opportunity and an option to hang on and sign with the UFC. And I know a lot of fighters do want that, but the fighters that you're talking about, like, for example, you put Simeon in the mix at light heavyweight, and he kind of, you know, he's somewhere on an undercard and people aren't really paying much attention to him, which is fine if you want to do your work in the dark. But some fighters, and Lewis McGrillen's a good example, like, he's destined for stardom. Like, you put a camera in front of him and he switches on, right? He wouldn't have got that same kind of attention up to this point in his career. And I feel like he can really, you know, grow his brand alongside the PFL, which is something that's very difficult to do with the UFC, especially when they take away, you know, your sponsorships and, you know, they kind of curate your career to be a part of the UFC. I want McGrillen to be a star in his own right. Same as with Dakota. Same as with the fighters that I've signed ready for next year as well. I mean, you know, Binder Skatitsi, both of those guys have got the potential to be absolute powerhouses in Europe. And if they can grow their brand alongside that, it gives them longevity outside of their career. It's the opportunity really to work with an organization as opposed to work for an organization. That's the feeling that's different for me. And that goes from, you know, these guys on PFL Europe all the way to Francis Ngannou. I've said this over and over again this week. Like, he's not signed to our promotion. Like, we work with him, right? He is a part of the PFL. And that's ultimately how it needs to be. It's how it is for boxing. That's how Mayweather's turned the game around when it comes to the boxing world. And, you know, you can do it in mixed martial arts as well. It's just difficult to do it in some promotions more than others.
Yeah, and then what do you sort of make of the way that PFL are really pushing the Irish fighters as well? Like, obviously myself and Ross are very happy with it, but like, what do you think it is about the Irish market that PFL really want to capture?
I think, to be honest, I mean, you look across Europe and you've got certain markets that really stand out. You know, Irish mixed martial arts, you know, because of McGregor, because of SBG, because of the ferocity of the Irish fans. Ultimately, I mean, you know, you guys have got the best fans in the world. The French are giving you a run for the money. I will say that. But that's another region which is really coming up. You know, French MMA, partly because it's quite new, but partly because it's only just been legalized. But Irish MMA feels different for me. It feels like everybody's waiting on that next big star, you know, and it really kind of comes from like McGregor and the Brandao event. Like, it was such a turning point for Irish mixed martial arts and this is why I feel like young Nate Kelly's got so much attention, because people were like, well, okay, he's the next guy, and then the Irish fans are just ready to rally around someone that's giving it their all. And I think that you've got so many good options in Irish mixed martial arts right now. I mean, you know, another guy that I'm looking at that I'm still working, I'd love to add into the card, is Jordan Fury, like an absolute superstar in the making for sure. But, you know,
serious power in the hands.
Yeah, scary power. You know, a vicious striker, confident in every range, got the backing of SBG as well. I feel like Irish MMA is kind of simmering and ready to explode again. It's ready for that second big wave of talent to come through. And in my opinion, we've got a good portion of that talent on the PFL roster.
Yeah, Dan, for people just tuning in now, like, a lot of people would want to go to Cage Wars. I know people are going to Bellator as well, but like, if people were sort of thinking about where they should take their career, why would PFL be the right choice?
I mean, for me as a fighter, if I was a young fighter, first and foremost, it's the guarantee of activity, right? If you keep winning fights, you're gonna stay active, right? You know your path. If I'm a fighter going into 2024 and I can sign a PFL contract into the 100K tournament. I know I've got 3 fights, and I know I've got 6 figures at the end of it. And that European title is also my ticket to bigger things, right? Whether I come back to Europe and do big feature shows in main and co-main event positions against bigger names, whether I move over onto the global roster and mix it up with, with the bigger names over there fighting for the world title and the $1 million. And then, of course, if you win that, then you can transition onto the pay-per-view events as well. So there's a clear path from the amateurs. If you're Biagio or you're young Nate Kelly, you keep winning, you go onto the European roster, then you win the European title, you move to the World Championships and get that. You've picked up $100,000, you've picked up $1 million. And then, your option is there, whether you want to stick around and try for a different belt in a different weight class or the same belt again, or whether you want the pay-per-view bracket, or, what else do you want to do? Do you want to box? Do you want to fight Jake Paul? I mean, like the options are really endless. We've got a lot of flexibility. And I think in the coming weeks as well, you're going to notice, you're going to realize that there's going to be a lot more within the PFL's hands in the coming months when it comes to, how do I put this without giving too much away? I'm sure you
give it all away. Give it all away.
Give it all away. It's the worst kept secret in MMA.
I'll get in trouble. This is the thing. I can't say too much.
No, don't worry. I'll tell James on Thursday. It was all my fault.
There's a lot coming up in 2024. The PFL are going to be doing a lot more, as well as things that are going to be linked with the PFL. So opportunities. That's the main reason.
Yeah, well, competition's always good, isn't it, Ross?
Yeah, 100% is. And like we said at the top of the hour, PFL are doing great work, and they're very much a welcome addition into the market, in the European market, and we love to see it. Before we do let you go, Dan, is the card finished? I know you talk about Jordan Fury, there's other people Gary Rooney, who was a hot young pro. J.R. Harris is a free agent at the moment. I'm sure these
Max
are all
Lally.
names you're well familiar with. Max Lally, I think, is over in Thailand at the moment. He's obviously very hot at the moment. Owen Sheridan's also looking to get a fight as well. There's a few people who are chomping at the bit.
Tiernan Lochran.
Yeah, Tiernan Lochran just fought there. Up in cage conflict, got a rear naked choke win. There's a few boys chomping at the bit, maybe for a fight. Is the card done, or could we see 1 or 2 more fights added at late notice?
I'm still looking at adding a couple of fights to the card. Absolutely, I'm still looking at what we can add to the card that's gonna make the fans feel like we're listening to them. Right? I'm an MMA fan, but I don't know everything about MMA. You've just thrown a bunch of names at me, and I recognize the names, but there's so many more names out there. This is the best thing about. As soon as I got this job, I had managers and coaches and fans messaging me. You got to check this guy. I got to check this guy out. There are so many fighters that I need to be adding to my roster and paying attention to. I'm very much playing catch up at the moment, but I'm gonna look at adding a couple more fights to this card, especially a couple of local derbies to get the gyms involved a bit more.
Yeah. And then just the last question for me, Dan. How many times would you expect PFL to come back to Dublin next year?
Oh man, we've got to come back at least once. At the moment, I'm playing with 4 shows for PFL Europe. We've got other things that we're working on around that. But at least once, I would love to come back there twice. We've got a couple of demands from elsewhere. I've got Italy's calling for a show, and Spain's calling for a show, and Germany wants us back. And we've not been to the Netherlands in a while, and we've got some good fighters representing there as well. So, like I said, what I'm realizing is we need more shows. I could do 12 shows in a year for PFL Europe and still have, double the roster that's not getting action. I'm hoping for at least a couple next year, though, in Dublin for sure.
Well, maybe that's the first port of call, January 1st. You sit down and go, I need more shows, and that's how we roll it out. Because look, more the merrier, I always say, and I'm definitely here for it. But Dan, I can't wait for it. It's going to be an incredible show. Like we said, you could list any fight on the card, and it could be main event. Obviously, you have to give massive shout outs to the Cork Horsebox, John Mitchell, who's fighting in the lightweight title. Sean O'Connell better mind his P's and Q's next time he's in the cage for a post-fight interview with him. and then also to Franz Malambo as well. Franz is a man of many skills, and he looks incredible in there. I'd like to see him put a bit more of an exclamation mark on the next performance. I feel like stop playing with your food, Franz, and get in there for the kill, because he's slick as hell in there. And then obviously Binder Katisi is going to be an absolute barn burner. And then obviously can't not mention D1's own Dylan Took. That man might make the show his own come fight night, because there ain't no character like Dylan Took.
No. And then shout out both Nathan Kellys. And
yeah, of course, main event of the undercard, and main event of the main card.
Yeah. So for people tuning in now, make sure to check it out on the Zone, and it's going to be live from Dublin's Tree Arena on Friday, December the 8th. Ross, anything else to say Dan, anything else to say before we wrap things up?
I don't think so. Just just come and join us. We're looking to have a celebration of mixed martial arts on that night, and December's always a good time to have a good blowout and have a good party, and it's going to be a party atmosphere. We're going to be handing out $100,000 checks to 4 champions. We're going to be handing out beautiful brand new belts, and we've got the future of Irish mixed martial arts on the card as well, and potentially a couple more to add. So it's going to be a good night, and I appreciate all your guys' support.
No worries, Dan. Dan, thanks a million for joining us. It's going to be an unbelievable night. Get there for the first fight. Nate the Great will be out in action. Or who knows, Dan Hardy might have a few more tricks up his sleeve. You never know. But it's going to be a fantastic night of mixed martial arts in the Tree Arena come December. We'll be there. Dan will be there. And all your favourite Irish fighters will be there. So if you are watching at home, make sure to like, share, subscribe. And as always, stay energized.
Energized show, up the Irish. Been sussing you guys a couple of times. I've seen a couple of clips. I think you done some interviews with Dylan Moran and that I saw. So keep going, keep up the good work, guys.